Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk about Azure Key Vault. So you might have a the need to use Azure Key Vault. Perhaps you are already familiar with other types of secret management in in a, in an IT environment, in a cloud environment. Azure Key Vault is a Microsoft managed service. It's a Microsoft managed secret storage service. It doesn't store secrets only, right? It stores secrets, stores your certificates, right? It also stores your keys, authentication keys, all right? So basically, this is what Azure Key Vault does. So perhaps your team, your organization needs a secure place to store their certificates, to store their secrets, to store their keys. You might consider testing out things with Azure Key Vault. So the Azure Key Vault provides the cloud-based storage environment where we can store any of these three entities. And of course, we can programmatically access any of these entities. I mean, namely the secrets, uh, the certificates, and the keys. We can programmatically access this secrets and protect our applications. You know, as a developer, as a cloud engineer, you will have situations whereby you might need to have a secure storage location for your authentication keys, for your certificates, your PEM files, right? You don't want to just store your VM PEM files, especially on Linux VM PEM files, on your local server or on a carelessly stored environment. So it's always good to have a secret storage service in place. And today, we're going to be talking about the Azure Key Vault. We're going to talk about how to create, right? How do you create the Key Vault? And of course, we'll also look at some PowerShell commands you can put in place while creating your Key Vault from the backend. If you don't want to use the GUI, if you don't want to use the Azure portal, you can use the alternative way, which is going through the PowerShell or Terraform or any of these infrastructure as code resources that is uh, convenient for you. Now, it's good to have a secret storage system in place before you even roll out your deployments, before you roll out your configurations, because we we don't want to leave anything for the malicious actor, right? For bad actors to be able to locate our secrets, our keys, our certificates. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the access control. So there are two ways we can manage access management. All right, so we can manage access to the key vault using the inbuilt role-based access control for the Active Directory, or we can use the access policy, which has to be created while initially setting up the key vault access policy. Let's take this out. All right, so we're going to talk about the two options that are available for managing access to the key vault. It's very important. Why do we need to implement access management? Because you want to ensure least privileged access. least privileged access to the key vault. All right. So the key vault is a PaaS service. Azure Key Vault is a PaaS. Let's do this here. It's a platform as a service. So that means that, of course, it has an instance. We don't directly interact with the instance. We don't directly interact with the virtual machine that is hosting the service. You just come in, bring in your keys, and start managing access, start managing the configurations of the skill that you might need to consider while setting up the, the keys. So Azure Key Vault is designed to support application keys, right? Secret keys. Of course, if you look at what we have highlighted so far, something is missing here. So there's one thing that the Azure Key Vault is not designed to store, your password. Okay? Azure Key Vault is not designed to store password. It's not. It's not designed to store passwords. Okay? So there's no solution for that in Azure Key Vault. All right. So let's talk about the service tiers. So if in Azure, as we already know, depending on the service that is interesting for your utilization, for your proof of concept, you will always have to deal with the pricing tier, the SKUs, right? So the same thing applies here. If you're trying to create your key vault, you get to select two service tiers. Service tiers. So you can either select the standard tier, or the premium tier. Of course, if you say premium, that means full stack. All the full stack functionalities are going to be available in the premium, and in the standard, yeah, a little bit of limitations with respect to standard. So the major difference between standard and premium is that premium supports uh, hardware security module configuration, right? So if you are bringing your custom managed keys, you want to set up HSM protected keys, all right? We'll be able to use the premium tier to implement that. So usually, why would you need a premium tier? Why would you need a HSM? Uh, Many times, organizations always want to be in control of their encryption keys, right? Of their authentication keys. Even though in Azure, there are two ways of encrypting data at rest. Okay. In Azure, we can encrypt data at rest using two possible means, right? You can either use the Microsoft managed keys or the customer managed keys. So with Microsoft managed keys, you don't really have to deal with the storage location for the keys. Microsoft's going to create the storage, the key vault. It's going to manage the key rotation, or the access to the keys and everything. You don't have to deal with it. But The other alternative is to utilize the customer managed key. So in this case, you, the customer, is in charge. All right. So you as a customer, you are in charge of your keys. You are in charge of the secured access to the keys. You are in charge of the access management to the keys. All right. That is one thing that makes it uh, different. That's I like this customer managed. And this could be for several reasons. One of the reasons would be that for instance, if you are supporting a healthcare based application platform, if you are supporting a finance, maybe a payment platform, a fintech application, those are heavily regulated industries like healthcare, talking about HIPAA. So there might be some HIPAA recommendations that mandates that uh, the the customer must be in possession of their encryption keys, right? So in that case, you are not going to be going for the maximum keys. You have to ensure that you have your customer managed keys in place. And of course, that means we need to set up a premium pricing tier for the key vaults. Now let's talk about the access. How do we configure access to the key vaults? Azure Key Vault, Azure Key Vault access. So access to the key vault is managed through two interfaces. So it's managed through the management plane and also managed through the data plane. Okay. So the management plane is where we manage the key vault itself. All right. So the data plane is where we actually work with the data that is stored in the key vaults. So the data plane actually deals with the metadata of the key vaults. Okay. So the management plane is the infrastructure itself, right? Then the content of the infrastructure is the metadata. So operations at the management plane, has to do with creating the key vaults, right? Creating key vaults, deleting key vaults, all right, managing key vaults, all right, uh, retrieving key vaults properties, right? In some other cases, you might need to update some access policies as well, all right? So all these tasks take place at the management plane. So with the data plane, where we are managing the metadata, in this case, we can now, of course, what are the contents of key vaults? Like we mentioned the other time, secrets, certificates, keys. Now we can add keys, can delete the keys. What else can we do? We can modify keys, okay? Not only keys though, secrets, certificates, right? At the data plane. All these can be managed at the data plane, all right? So so we can use the Active Directory authentication. Well, it's no longer Active Directory. It's now Microsoft Entra ID, but we can still use that sparingly. So we can manage access using the Active Directory authentication, right? So if you want to grant your users access, you can say, okay, they can use their Active Directory credentials to access the key vaults, right? So that is managed at the tenant level for that account. So for the Active Directory authentication option, that means that we'll be able to, we'll be able to centrally control access to all the key vaults within the tenant. Of course, the tenant belongs to an organization. And of course, we'll also be able to do an audit trail of transactions respective to users, developers, engineers. So if a user is no longer part of the team, we'll be able to instantly take that user off the key vaults, right? So that there's no lag time between the time a user leaves the organization and then their access is blocked. We want to ensure that once a user leaves the organization, they instantly lose access to all key vaults within the organization. And of course, a typical organization will be able to customize authentication by using the uh, all these security options available in the Active Directory, Microsoft Entra ID. We can set up MFA, right, for additional security so that we will ensure that we have a highly secured, highly resilient secret storage environment. So there are different roles that are available. If we go back, let me launch the portal and just give you a walkthrough of Azure Key Vault. Bringing it up now. Okay, it's taking a minute. Okay, hold on. Dot Azure. Count here. Key vaults. So here is where we create the key vaults. So let's try to create a new key vault. Let's give this a what's the so the name of the key vault is so key vault 1, 2, 3. So we have to specify the location of the key vault. So in this case, the key vault is going to be created in East US. That means a data center in the East US region. That is going to be the location of the key vault where it's going to be created. And remember the other time we talked about the pricing tier. So this is where we select with the pricing tier that is most suitable for us. Of course, there are some pricing considerations that we might need to put in place, how at the back of our mind. So if you look at the what you're going to be charged, what you're paying for. So you'll be charged per transactions, right? Per 10,000 transactions. And if you are dealing with secrets operations, here comes at yeah, amount of $0.03 for every 10,000 transactions for certificate operations. Let's see. Uh, we have to also, yeah, just make sure you factor in the cost of using the key vaults depending on the tier you go for. So if you have to deal with hardware security modules, that means it's only available at the premium tier and the first 250 keys, right? And then from 250 keys and above, 251 keys and above, 1,500 keys goes to $2.50. Yeah, it goes on and on like that. So those are some information you might want to keep at the back of your mind while setting up your Azure Key Vault. Always provide a retention period for deleted items. So this soft delete works like your recycle bin in your computer, right? So that means that if anything is deleted here, it's still available within the stipulated retention period. In this case, the retention period is 90 days. So that if there's an accidental deletion of the key vault, you can still retrieve it within, you can still recover it within 90 days. Now, this is where it gets interesting. You have to determine the port protection configuration. You want to disable port protection. If we disable port protection, that means that the key vault and its objects will be outrightly removed during the retention period. But we don't want this to happen because what's the point? We want to be able to recover if you ever have to the deleted key vault in the event of an accidental data loss. So we'll rather enable port protection. Once this is enabled, you cannot modify it again. So always pay attention to that. All right, so how do we manage permissions? Access. Always recommend using the role-based access control. But of course, if you want to have granular access, granular management for your key vault, you can go for the vault access policy. You can streamline to the resources that you want this access to work for. So you can use the existing access policy, or you can actually go ahead and create our own access. So if I want to create a new template, that means that I want to actually create granular access, get, update, import. So this will be applied to specific user that's going to be accessing the key vault, specific entities. So what can they do? This is just what it's saying. So on the certificates, on the keys, on the secrets, what are you allowed to do? You're allowed to list the content, delete, recover. So just check those boxes that aligns. And if you don't want to go through this because we have some templates that you can use. There's some templates you can use here. And if you want to set this up for secrets, for certificates that needs to be managed, I can just use that template for certificate management. Okay, can do this now. Go back to do it. If this has to do with backup for Azure, can also make those corresponding selections. All right, so once this is completed, we'll go ahead and create our policy. So policy is as we created now. And this is a storage service. Best practice, never expose your storage service to the internet. So this is where you determine how the storage is going to be accessed. Do you want to enable public access? Or you want to set up a private connection using the private endpoint or service endpoint, right? So if you want to use a private endpoint, just need to follow the guide, right? You want to lock this down to a specific subnet. That means that only servers within this network will be able to access the key vaults. That's just what it is. So you have to be within the Morgan VM VNet to be able to access the key vaults. So the other alternative is to enable public access. Well, this is for demos. Never do this in your production environment. Make sure you have your policies in place to Azure policy in place to mandate that for every keyboard that is created, it is not exposed to the internet. Yeah, so once this is done, we go ahead and create our key vaults. Taking a minute. See. So while that is going on. All right, so the key vault has been created, and let's go ahead and examine the key vault. Now to refresh this. Okay, so it's done. So this contoso KV123. Remember, the key vault is designed to store these three objects: the keys, the secrets, the certificates. Now, let's look at the keys. So what kind of, how can we create keys for storage, or how can we set up the key storage service? You can actually generate your keys from here, right? As an RSA or as an electrical curve, EC. And you can also specify the size of the key at the time of generation. We can set up start and expiration dates for those keys. Yeah, we can also set up a rotation policy for the keys. So the first thing we want to do here is to determine where the keys are. You want to actually create new keys by generating them, or you want to import from a local file, local environment, a storage service, or you want to use you want to restore from a backup. Three ways we can create keys, and once all these conditions are met, you can have your key created. The other way is to another item that can be stored here is to create secrets. And of course, you can create manually. You can actually create certificates as well. So if you already have a certificate created somewhere else, you can upload from the local environment, set up the expiration date as well, and begin to use it. And of course, certificates, all right? And create your certificates, generate or import. Now you can determine the type of certificate authority you want to enforce. Is it a self-signed certificate? Is it going to be issued by a certificate authority or a non-integrated certificate authority? So these are decisions that the whole team has to come up with. It's like you are not the one that will make those decisions alone. It's going to be a collective responsibility of the team and stakeholders to determine the policy around how certificates are going to be created. Is there going to be a PK, CS content type, or a PEP file? So once all these are done, you can start utilizing them. If there's a VM that needs certification keys, we can save the keys here so that the VM will call for the authentication keys from here. All right. And of course, for continuous scanning vulnerability assessment of the storage service, in terms of security, there is the readily available Microsoft Defender for Cloud, which can be utilized for vulnerability assessment of the key vaults, right? So this is you don't have to do anything here, right? You can just go ahead and build the recommendations that are put in place for your key vault. All right. So if there's a live environment, a production environment, you're going to see a lot of activities here. But since this is we are using this for demo, you won't see so much. And of course, you can actually create this keyboard using PowerShell, using a Bash script, using Terraform. So you as you advance on the job, as you continue to improve on the job, you may not have you might not have the luxury of doing the few things I've showed us here um, from the portal. You might actually have to do them from the back end. So if you go back to the overview, they'll also see the SKU here. So in this case, we selected the standard SKU and sub-delete has been enabled. Let's check out the access policy. So you can now see the access policy. If you are using the role-based access control, so you go under access control and then the access management. Let's check out the roles that are available for key vaults. All right, so these are the parameters that are available for a typical service resource user that needs to manage whatever it is, either the secrets, the certificates, the keys. All right. So this is just a few things to note with respect to the Azure Key Vault. And it's a very wide topic, but I've tried to give you some key points, some reasons why we need it, and of course, how do we create it for the first time? So if this is your first time, try to do this in your own environment, your own account. Just see how it works, play around with the features, check the events if there's any. All right, check the keys, check certificates, try to upload some, and just look at the fun stuff around it. All right, thank you so much for joining. See you again very soon.